Welcome to YPQA 101, where we do an overview of the Youth Program Quality Assessment. Before we get started, take a minute to think about when you were a young person and participated in an after-school or summer program, or maybe a club at school. What positive memories do you have? Maybe you remember just loving a space to be doing things with your friends. Maybe you remember learning a new activity or doing something you either hadn't done before or exploring something you love a little bit deeper. It could be that adult who always made you feel seen and capable of doing things, a place to explore without the fear of failure or judgment. Or maybe it was a place where you could share your voice. When you think about whatever those spaces were for you, and you think about what the leaders in those spaces did to create those conditions for you to feel safe and supported and engaged, you're identifying staff practices that matter. The Youth Program Quality Assessment, or YPQA, is a tool that helps create a shared language around those practices that help youth workers be intentional in creating welcoming and engaging opportunities for young people, and hold ourselves accountable to youth through reflecting and adjusting to continue to do right by our young people. So to do that, here are the topics that we're going to cover in this video. We're going to start with the background of the PQA tools. If you've already watched the SEL PQA 101 video, the background segments is the same. So you can click to the next segment in the video where we talk about the YPQA scales. In that portion, we'll do an overview of the content in this tool. Next, we'll walk through a couple of examples on how to read the tool and then wrap up with your next steps if you want to learn more or go deeper with the YPQA. Where did the Youth Program Quality, or the PQA, come from? This timeline highlights Sprocket's connection with the Weikart Center for Youth Program Quality, the organization that developed the PQA. The Weikart Center itself has a much longer history, but this gives some context for how the tool evolved and why it's become such an important part of our work. In 2001, the Weikart Center developed the Youth Program Quality Assessment, that YPQA, framework based on practices that emerged from years of operating the High Scope Camp, which evolved into the Institute for Ideas, which is Initiative, Diversity, Expectations, Achievement, and Service. These programs, based in Michigan, became nationally recognized as exemplary non-school educational programs because they consistently created engaging, high-quality learning experiences for young people. Rather than simply documenting what they did, the Weikart Center studied these practices. Which one specifically made the biggest difference for youth? Those best practices became the foundation for the professional development, coaching, and ultimately the Youth Program Quality Assessment. In 2002, the PQA entered a 3-year validation study to ensure the tool was both reliable and effective as a measure of program quality. Although Sprockets officially launched in 2011, several St. Paul organizations were already involved in this work through partnerships between the University of Minnesota and the Weikart Center. Local programs helped shape how assessment and professional learning could be used together as part of a continuous improvement process. Over the years, Sprocket's partners have valued the PQA because it provides a shared language for quality. Programs can use the tool to plan experiences using the research-based best practices, observe what is happening during programming, reflect on the strengths and areas of growth, and guide professional development and coaching across our network. You'll also notice several other versions of the tool shown in green on the timeline. The school-age PQA, which is very similar to the youth PQA, with a few adaptations for school-age settings, and St. Paul programs have also participated in pilots for tools such as the Academic Skill Builder PQA and the Summer Learning PQA. Most recently, back in 2016, multiple partners helped pilot what is now the SEL PQA. Based on feedback from systems like ours, the Weikart Center refined the tool to focus on the social-emotional learning practices that matter most while maintaining the continuous improvement process that programs were already familiar with. As we move through this overview, it's important to remember that the PQA is a tool. It's designed to support planning, observation, reflection, and continuous improvement. The research behind it gives us confidence that the practices included represent strong, evidence-informed approaches for supporting our young people. At the same time, no single tool captures everything. Depending on your program's mission, culture, and goals, there may be additional practices that are essential to your work that aren't explicitly measured by the PQA. And yes, the tool can feel like a lot at first. That's one of the things I appreciate most about the Sprockets approach. Programs aren't expected to master everything overnight. Each team can build their practice over time, focusing on the areas that are most meaningful for their youth and staff. Our Sprockets network largely is using the SEL-PQA, which you can learn about in the SEL-PQA 101 overview video. But if your program is looking to build a foundation of quality practices, the YPQA provides a strong framework to guide that work, and that is what we're going to focus on for this overview. Here, in no particular order, are the reasons Sprockets has continued to support programs utilizing the program quality assessment for years. It represents quality youth development practices that work to support young people. The tool is a rubric that allows youth workers, whether in planning or in observation, a differentiation in their practice, how they engage youth in meaningful ways. And whether at the program level or at a system level, it helps provide that shared language that allows youth workers to grow together and learn from each other. The process of using the PQA through observation is what makes the tool powerful. Not only does the person being observed benefit from reflecting on their practices, the person observing also benefits from watching others do their work and identifying those practices in action. And finally, the flexibility of the tool. Programs can use it in planning and reflecting on the opportunities they want to provide, and even honing in on and prioritizing which items are most important to them, and planning observing those items in a focused way to intentionally improve those areas before moving on to prioritize what makes sense for their program next. Which is why this is a continuous program improvement cycle. The tool allows you to take a snapshot of your program, observing one session or many sessions over time, and then use that data report as a way to have a reflective conversation and make meaning of it with staff. Conversations that help you look at those scores, decide what you want to celebrate, what surprises you, what sometimes maybe challenges you to think a little bit more deeper about your program and what you want to prioritize for your young people. Ultimately, creating annual goals. Some may be low-hanging fruit that can improve with a quick adjustment, or others that may take more time to grow and develop. It is a continuous process that is low stakes. Here are two examples of how locally we talk about CPI, both at the St. Paul level and statewide. While the phrasing is a little bit different, the concept is the same. It's about making incremental changes over time. If you are one of our St. Paul-based partners, reach out to learn more about how to get involved in our activator cycle. In other metro area communities or in greater Minnesota, Ignite After School is a great contact to learn more about the M3 cycle. So let's take a closer look at what the YPQA looks like. So here you'll notice there's 4 domains. The domains are those horizontal bars, starting with the foundation of safe environment and moving up to the top of that pyramid at youth engagement. In that green pyramid, there are 18 scales across each of those domains. And within those 18 scales, there's actually 63 items. So each scale having between 3 to 6 items that help to kind of theme together into that scale. This can feel like a lot to take in it all at once. And so let's break it down one domain at a time. As we move through the 4 domains, you will see them laid out like this. On the top in bold is listed the domain from those 4 horizontal bars on the image we saw before. After the domain, the list is the scales that make up that section. Those scales are listed again on the page, but this time the specific items are listed below each scale. These are the individual practices that are included as the rubric portion of the tool with the suggested best practices. This session is just an overview, so if you want to learn more about the rubric and how each of those items are measured, I encourage you to go to the website listed here. Or if you are in our Sprockets network, reach out for our next training opportunity. So here we see the safe environment domain. There are 5 scales in this domain: emotional safety, healthy environment, emergency preparedness, accommodating environment, and nourishment. Safe environment is the foundation for quality. If young people don't feel physically or emotionally safe or aren't having their physical needs met, it can be very difficult to successfully meet your goals in other parts of your pyramid of quality. While we often feel as staff that these are the givens in how we operate our program, it is important to pay attention to these items and that we really focus on what staff can do intentionally and consistently from day one and over time. Having conversations about what we do to create safe spaces and having observations to see if we're actually doing those actions daily and reinforce those safe spaces is important so that we can hold ourselves accountable for creating that space young people deserve and not unintentionally assuming these things continue to happen over time. Go ahead and pause here to read through all of the items included in the Safe Environment Scales. In Supportive Environment, we focus on warm welcome, session flow, active engagement, skill building, encouragement, and reframing conflict. One thing you might notice is that these are clearly specific to staff practices. What you do matters. I will use the encouragement scale as an example. That first item is around non evaluative language. While I can tell young people how I think they are doing, that takes the opportunity away from a young person evaluating themselves. When I say, "You're doing a great job," it might feel good for a young person in the moment, but if I ask open ended questions and don't focus the conversation on my opinion, it helps young people think more deeply about their thoughts, their opinions about what they're doing. For example, questions like, "Wow, how did you decide to do that?" Or, "If you were going to do it again, would you do anything differently?" Or, "I can tell you're very proud of how it turned out." My showing interest, asking questions, and staying involved can encourage young people in a more sustained way than simply immediately providing approval. Go ahead and pause for a moment to review the items in all of the skills listed here. In interactive environment, we focus on belonging, collaboration, leadership, and adult partners. One thing I want to point out here is the use of the word opportunities. Again, staff are creating these opportunities for youth. Even with the opportunity, sometimes youth choose not to engage. This tool doesn't ding folks for not engaging. For example, staff may create a small group activity and notice that a couple youth aren't contributing. What you will notice, though, is that within that scale, interdependent roles is also an item. This item reinforces that opportunity for young people to work together. But even with interdependent roles, we know that anyone who's ever had a group project, some groups are more collaborative than others. But when staff are intentional and foster the space that encourage collaboration to happen, it's really important, even if it doesn't always go as we hope. While some things do happen organically, deliberate and intentional program planning increases the likelihood that young people will have a quality experience components that are listed here. Go ahead and pause for a moment and review the items in all the skills. Engagement sits at the top of the pyramid because these practices create opportunities for young people to actively think, explore, and build the critical thinking skills we want to support them in developing. Take supporting plans and goals as an example. Setting goals and creating a plan to achieve them is a lifelong skill that applies in school, work, relationships, and everyday life. Young people don't develop these skills simply by being told how to do it. They develop them by having opportunities to practice. And there is more than one way to make a plan. Different people use different strategies based on what works best for them personally or what works best for the particular project. You might brainstorm or sticker vote, make a pros and cons list. You might backwards map or create a timeline or even break down into steps for SMART goals. These opportunities can be as simple as setting a goal for the day or activity, then breaking down or planning the steps to complete the goal, deciding how to approach a challenge, or reflecting on what they'd like to improve next time. They can also happen through larger projects where youth set long term goals and monitor their progress over time. The key is being intentional about creating opportunities for young people to think and make decisions, solve problems, and practice these skills through your program. Go ahead and pause for a moment to review the items and all the skills listed here. In this section, we're going to walk through how to read the tool. If you've watched the SEL-PQA overview, you'll notice that this is kind of similar. All of the program quality assessment tools are laid out the same. Opening the tool the first time can seem overwhelming because it's pages of text laid out in a grid. First, let's break down how the information is laid out. I mentioned before that there are multiple forms. The front of each tool states which form of the tool you're using. Here, we're looking at a sample from the YPQA. Earlier, when I looked at the pyramid image, I mentioned there's 4 domains. Each page will have this line across the top and tell you which domain that page is from. Then there is a scale. The scale is noted both at the top of the page, along with the domain, and as a header, so you know that all the information on that page is regarding that scale. In this example, we see that we are in the supportive environment and the skill building scale. Each scale has anywhere from 3 to 6 items. Each item extends across the row and includes a brief descriptor or indicator for that item. You will also note that it's divided as a 1, 3, 5 scale. These are the scores related to this item. Note that there isn't a 2 or a 4. In the right column, this is where you might note your anecdotal evidence. That's what you've seen or heard staff saying related to that item during an observation. The evidence in this example is a staff saying, "Today we're going to learn about butterflies. We specifically are going to learn about the monarch and 3 variations of eastern swallowtails, and see if at the end of the day you can all identify all 4 varieties." In the 4 small groups, each group was assigned 1 butterfly to review and present 4 things to know about their butterfly. After presentations, groups were able to create their own clothespin and tissue paper butterflies to decorate the room. So, based on that evidence, when we look at the scale, this program would score a 5 in that item. With 63 different items, the tool can feel overwhelming. There is a day-long training that specifically helps youth workers get familiar with the tool and practice taking observational notes and supporting evidence. It does take practice. Even without the training, though, once you know what to look for, you can select a couple of scales and simply focus on better understanding them. Let's walk through the full skill building scale. First is to understand which each item is about. These are the topics for each item that make up that scale. This can be found in a handbook as a quick reference on the item summary page, and that's a handbook that you get during the training. I mentioned that the evidence that we looked at earlier would be considered a 5 based on the rubric. Let's break down the indicators to see why. We won't spend too much time on the ones as we go through these forms. That typically means that the item wasn't observed. When we look at the 3 and the 5, the first part of each of these is this game. It's about staff telling youth what the learning or skill building focus is. The difference is in whether or not the focus is actually clearly linked to the activity. Our evidence that they were going to be learning about butterflies and then the activity involving learning about butterflies makes it a 5. If the activity ended up being just the craft portion in making the butterflies, but didn't involve any learning about butterflies, then it wouldn't have been clearly linked to that learning goal. This is a more obvious example, but what if our activity was doing a marshmallow spaghetti tower? As an activity itself, it can be a hands-on fun for a group of young people. But when we explicitly link it to a skill, like communication or working as a team, problem solving, or engineering, it helps young people approach the activity through the lens of the skill and practice it, and reflect on how the skill showed up in the activity. The second item about encouraging youth to try skills, the difference between a 3 and a 5 is whether it happens for some youth or all youth. Because our evidence shows that the staff encouraged those presenting to project so that everyone could hear them, it is encouraging some youth to practice a skill. So that would be a 3 for some youth. But if the staff also said to the full group, "We have 3 more minutes. If you have your 3 facts already, see if you can come up with a bonus fact," that is encouraging everyone to do a little bit more, which would make it a 5. With skills, we want to meet young people where they're at. For some youth, our activities might not be that challenging. So having an opportunity to have them stretch a bit allows for youth to reach a little bit more and continue to build on their skills. Item 3 is about staff modeling skills. Again, the difference between a 3 and a 5 is the skill is modeled for some youth or all youth. This item is a great example of why it is okay to get a 1 on some of these items, especially if it is intentional. If your group is doing a STEM project, Let's say they're going to build mini boats out of a variety of supplies to see what they can make that would float, holding maybe 2 quarters. The goal of the project is to design something, try it, and redesign based on what you learned. You wouldn't want to model the project step by step because the activity itself is exploratory. But here, our evidence shows that staff is modeling how they will use the provided fact sheets and underline or circle facts and decide which facts to present. It doesn't state directly if this was modeled for the full group before the activity. If it was, this would be a 5. If staff handed out supplies and then saw the small group was struggling, staff might have modeled it for the small group. In that case, it would have been a 3. Item 4 is about breaking down tasks. Sometimes the activity is so simple it doesn't require being broken down into steps, and that is okay. It would be a 1. But if you're looking to support young people in skill building, you want to provide opportunities that require them to practice a skill. Maybe stretch a bit, like we mentioned, that zone of proximal development where they may need a little bit of support. As with the previous items, it is based on for some youth or all youth. For this example, the evidence shows that staff not only provided the steps to take turns reading, underline the facts, decide on your 3 facts, and then decide who will present, but they also wrote it on the board. Because staff did this for the full group, it would score a 5. For our final item in this scale, we're focusing on support for struggling youth. Because building skills means young people aren't already proficient at it. There might be times that youth struggle. That might include struggling that result in big emotions, but it also could include struggling that just makes it difficult for a youth to progress. See that there is a note already in the evidence section. With the PQA tools, you always provide a 1, 3, or 5 score even if you don't see something happen. There are a couple of items, however, like this example, where you can put an X. Here, if no youth struggle, you would put an X and you wouldn't put in a score. Otherwise, the difference between a 3 and a 5 in this item is if staff always provides support and encouragement, it'd be a 5, or if they only sometimes provide support and encouragement, it would be a 3. Our example here shows that one group was struggling to find 3 facts. Staff shared that each section has at least 1 fact, so to revisit a section that they haven't already found a fact in and read through it again. This supports them in keeping to try, encouraging that there is information they need in that document. If this was the only example of struggling, we would score this a 5. If there was evidence that other young people were struggling but staff didn't provide supports, then it would be a 3. So what you see here is a breakdown of just one of the 18 scales of the YPQA. So where can you go from here? Well, where you are starting from and your interests will inform what next steps make sense for you. You can explore the tool more, decide if it would benefit you, your staff team, your program, or your OST network. If you are in our Sprockets network, reach out to find more about how your organization connect with supports for the tool. If you aren't, visit the Weikart Center website listed in our description to learn more. If you do want to start using the tool, whether it is new to your program or just new to you, identify what scales are important to you right now. Just focus on 2 to 3 scales, like what we did here. Trying to tackle the whole tool can be overwhelming. Start with what is a priority for your program right now. And build skills connected with those scales. If you know where you have work to do, you don't need to start out measuring it. You can use the tool to plan activities or visit the Sprockets YouTube playlist for quick guide videos that can start your learning or learning with your team right away. Again, if you are one of our Sprockets network partners, reach out to learn how Sprockets can support you wherever you are ready to go next. So that is it, the YPQA overview. Thank you for your commitment to young people, and we will see you in a future quick guide video.